Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a great one for you here today. On the show, we're talking a little bit about some of the latest going on with this reconciliation bill. And really, what we came to expect, after a while was that Biden would kind of, really seriously water things down to quite a degree. And that is what he has done. We'll give you the details. We'll give you some of the worst of it and, really some of the big stuff that has been taken out of this bill. Whether or not actually progressives should vote for it on today's show. Also, Joe Manchin, his daughter, will be really very, very interesting story here about how the role really that she played in the drug EpiPen and the price fixing scandal, the price inflation scandal that arose there, and what that could mean for the reconciliation bill. Always worth exploring. And of course, we're going to be following the not quite historic yet, but pretty significant strike wave going on with the potential to expand, especially in the John Deere and Kellogg areas. What's going on there? Some of the court resistance that some of these strikers are facing. Find out about that and a lot more. So thank you so much for joining us here today. This is Newsflash. Alright, so let's go to this thread here now from Manu Raju in CNN. He's talking pretty much about the new bill and Biden, pretty much coming to a point that we all kind of knew he would come to, where he'd just say, you know what, we're going to have to really just buckle in. Because it seemed like, again, there was nothing he would really do. There was nothing he would, no serious move he would really make towards Joe Manchin. No, actual threat other than some mild public condemnation. Nothing really too serious, and maybe, I'm sure, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. I'm sure there's probably a little bit of, private, a fair bit of private arm twisting from a lot of, Democratic sources. Not all of them would be associated with the president. But what we are really seeing here is a, big, the kind of capitulation that we all knew would come. Because, again, what I think that Joe Biden knows is he doesn't really care how big or necessarily what is in the reconciliation bill. I mean, that argument I think that Bernie and the kind of progressive caucus were making was, what are you going to want to cut out? What is the big thing that Joe Manchin is willing to stand up in front of the public and say, what are you going to put out? Well, here is what it is. So this is Manu Raju. Biden told House progressive tuition-free public community college is out of the package per multiple sources. Child tax credit will not go as far as some people would like, likely a 1-year extension. Again, these are two, especially the child tax credit, very politically popular, very successful packages. One of them is going to, I think it's going to be 1-year extension. That's going to expire roughly right through the midterm. So these are just the, the preliminary round of cuts. I think this is more of just for Manchin. I don't know what is going on with Kristen Sinema at the moment. I don't even know if they've talked to her at this point. She's not been in any kind of meetings. Last I heard, she was somewhere in Europe. I mean, I don't really know. So the home health care likely is going to be less than $250 billion. The Dems had wanted $400 billion, and then climate change is going to be so debate. The biggest thing here, the biggest sticking point that we know from progressives has been, the no climate, no deal talking point that we've heard a lot from them. The question is, will they be able to, how hard are they going to be willing to hold the line on that? What is going to be, their, specific red lines on climate? How much, there has already been a lot put out, a lot watered down, and, Joe Manchin is, a deeply dirty kind of coal man in this department. So that's something to consider. And of course, he's not just tied to any coal power plant. He's tied to one of the most dirty coal power plants in Virginia because he's Joe Manchin. Of course, that's how it is. But anyway, he said they're still looking at community college scholarships, which is perfect. The exact for just again a total price tag over here, which is going to be somewhere around $1.75 billion when this bill comes to the floor, and. We're getting community college scholarships. Think about how sad that is. You can get people have access to scholarships to go to, regular college. It's just like such a, like, the political promises and, the things that Joe Biden ran on are things that, a lot of people thought that they were getting from Joe Biden, when put up against the actual achievements, can you just, like, to be paler and paler by the day here. It really just makes you want to tear your hair out. They're looking at community college scholarships, and also Medicare is still on the table, as is universal pre-K and ACA funding. Dems had discussed with Biden $300 billion for climate change measures, but it's not clear how that shakes out. The price tag would be around $2 trillion. He told progressive lawmakers negotiators are weighing a reduction of the duration of paid leave benefit in the economic and climate package to 4 weeks, down from a proposed 12 weeks, 3 sources told Phil Mattingly and Mataraju. In talking to House progressives at votes tonight, what's clear is the climate change provisions are not settled and still is taking point after the White House meeting. Jared Huffman told me that he's a no if the final bill does not have aggressive emissions reductions. And the question is, what form is that going to come in? Because we've already heard, like, they're now, like, because Kristen Sinema's having a hissy fit about taxes. They're now saying, we're going to do a carbon tax, because she and Joe Manchin cannot accept any burden on the rich or any burden on fossil fuel producers. So they're literally going to get, like, the one climate measure that's already horrifically ineffective, the most politically unpopular thing you can do. And there's a whole host of other, like, politically popular things in this bill they seem intent on attacking, specifically those, that are popular in both of their home states. But, really what we're seeing here is, like, they don't care about the interest. They don't care about getting reelected. They don't care about any interest but themselves, where they're going to end up next, or, protecting their already fat pocketbooks in the case of Manchin. I'm not saying, Sinema's poor either, by the way. So, like, he's got the coal. He's got his daughter, which we'll get to. Like, it is very, very, very interesting to see the certain things that he is trying to weigh here. And so, yeah, Jared Huffman said he's a no. The final bill doesn't have aggressive emission reduction. So if they do a carbon tax, though, like, that is something to watch for, because I've heard whispers that they are actively, legitimately, seriously considering a carbon tax. Like, the thing that literally led to half of France, it was the trigger that, like, pretty much led to lead to half of France being, like, destroyed. It's, overwhelmingly hurting, like, working class or lower income people. Like, it is just an awful idea. And again, going against and hurting so many of the popular provisions that are already in the bill, and that are, constantly being cut out now, it feels like. So he asked about Manchin's opposition to achieving a 50% reduction over the next decade. Huffman told me, we're not going to let that be the final word. My view, this is the 13th Amendment moment. Lincoln did whatever he did to get that vote. This is one of those times. And again, that is exactly right. If they have this mindset, I think it's going to be so interesting, actually, to see what Bernie Sanders does on this and see what some of the biggest progressives do on this, because they were, Pramila Jayapal kept the caucus in order. That 95-member caucus, her and Ilhan Omar, were very, very good about making sure that that 95, on the first round, when they tried to bring the infrastructure bill to the floor to please Josh Gottheimer, they were a very, very solid no. And if they stay that way, which they should, like, that is something that is very, very serious, because this is not an acceptable bill. This is just not an acceptable bill to pass at this time. And if progressives are serious about being any sort of force, they need to be able to stand up and clearly dictate what is acceptable and what is not. Because if they can't do that, then why not just hand you, like, literally, just hand you, why even be there? Like, go home at that point. Because you're letting just Joe Manchin run away with it and proving you don't even care about passing anything and getting anything done. Because you guys choose to, as much as the Democratic leadership needs to do the same thing. If you're progressive, you can only, if you're in power as well, there is only so much you can do to, stall and say, it's the big bet, it's the corporate leadership. No, you have leverage, you have a lot of power, you've already exercised it once. Maybe it'll be, slightly smaller numbers this time for Jayapal, but I think still, this has to, like, in terms, especially in terms of the climate provisions, like, there is just horrific stuff coming out about this every day. Like, the effects for young people just completely, like, getting closer and closer to being just irreversible. And this is what we are, like, delaying. Just, throw a little $300 billion more. We're getting, how many? $700 billion to defense this year, like more than they asked for. We just cannot stop giving them money. Like they need the money like so bad. Like we can't. There's like enough, like literally, they're saying it's too much at this point. Yeah, it is really, really quite frustrating, and like that's the kind of attitude I really think that they need to take. And Pramila Jayapal, she has to do that again. She has to hold the caucus here to a strong no vote. So anyway, let's take a look at what Joe Biden's up to. He is out in Scranton, Pennsylvania, on Wednesday to pitch his retooled vision for overhauling federal health care, education, climate, and tax laws, even as the future of his signature economic package remains unsettled among Democrats on Capitol Hill. For Biden and his allies on Congress, the next few days could be critical. Democratic leaders hope they can finally broker a truce to end the public feuding between the party's ambitious liberals and spending-weary moderates. Again, just, I am weary of that ridiculous, 10-year-old framing from the Washington Post. The moderates are just spending weary. They're just about being fiscally savvy and not holding, we are so past the point of that, 2016, how are you going to pay for framing? It's just it's absolutely laughable. So some now hope they can reach a deal this week, putting them back on track to adopt the full tranche of spending, perhaps before the end of the month. So it's just literally just about getting it done and making it seem like Biden's do something. Because I think really correctly, one of the big things that people are starting to realize is that Biden is not doing anything. He's not taking an active role in government. Things are not getting done. There's more chaos, cases are rising, things like that. Although they calmed down. That was behind a lot of the kind of panic with the polls over the last few months. I think, this would be a key step in assuaging some of those fears and some of those, gripes about the person who said he was going to come in there and restore the soul of the nation. So a day before the speech here in Scranton, he huddled with two warring factions, presented rough outlines for a compromise package that could total between $1.75 and $1.9 trillion over 10 years. The still fluid price tag is far less than $3.5 trillion. Some Democrats essentially envisioned. Again, this was already a compromise. People don't talk about this. Was not what they envisioned. This was what I think Joe Biden came up in at 6, and they got down to 3.5 already. So it is false again there to say that is a compromise. So the new framework appears to open the door for Democrats to secure some of their long-sought spending programs, including funds to combat climate change, new initiatives such as paid family leave and medical leave, and expansion to Medicare to offer the new dental, vision, and hearing benefits. This is the most detailed conversation with the president, going through every line item, said Ro Khanna, who joined the meeting with Biden at the White House in an interview late Tuesday. It was very reassuring to see almost all the progressive priorities getting to be, part of the framework. So, I don't know how reassured I would be if I were Ro Khanna by this bill, and I'm definitely not reassured as me by hearing Ro Khanna say this. I don't see any of the progressive they're in the framework, but they're made as meaningless as possible. We still don't know about climate. Some of the child tax credit stuff, incredibly weak. And just it's not a politically smart move. But it is still, it is, it's just nonsensical, whatever angle you look at it. And, I don't get where, Ro Khanna is getting that, or at least anywhere where it should be. So Biden's proposal, again, it says literally the next paragraph here with Ro Khanna, or 2 paragraphs down, Biden's proposal appears to have eliminated a key program to incentivize clean energy. The pastor Joe Manchin, for example, has opposed it. By the way, the Washington Post probably not going to tell you here is that he gets, $500,000 from coal each year. It's a mission angered some liberal-leaning lawmakers who exited the meeting with the president on Tuesday evening, calling on the White House to take a more aggressive stance to combat climate change. Jared Huffman is quoted again in this. The Medicare expansion similarly could see cuts to that ability to affect its ability to offer benefits in the way that lawmakers, including Senator Bernie Sanders, once imagined. A plan to provide universal pre-kindergarten remains intact, but Democrats could end up shelving a related effort to provide 2 years of community college to Americans, and a proposal, again, to extend that child tax credit has been scaled back, so that is to 1 year instead of 5 or 10. That's pretty much the sum of things. But yeah, like, is Joe Biden doing enough here? Is there more he can do? Is there more he should do? I think yes. I'm going to hint at a possible hardball solution coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, we have so many fun things to report here at the Spencer Walsh Radio Network that you're going to want to tune into. First and foremost, we have Newsflash, our flagship show, which will be on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, of course. And now, for the first time ever, we have the Spencer Walsh Show in a rare collaboration and syndication with WMFO 91.5 in Somerville and Medford. It'll be on the air there first and live, 1 to 2 p.m. every single Monday. And from there, we'll put it on SD Run podcast feed within 24 hours. That's the lineup. Just keep listening to the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it today. We're talking about this. This is a great piece here about Ryan Grimm, because it's pointing up, a very good thing that we've seen, and it's something, great reporting here about The Intercept, and really a great illustration of just, again, another example of the casual corruption that is so present in our government. So this is Heather Bresch, former president and CEO of the drug maker Mylan, worked with the CEO of Pfizer, current CEO Albert Bourla, the guy who wants to, put a booster in you every arm, put a booster in your arm like every 6 months for the end of time, which is, by the way, something I do not trust at all. I'm generally a vaccine person. I cannot understand why you would not get the first vaccine. But the idea that, oh yeah, we need a booster for the end of time, make a better shot. That's all I'm going to say. Just make a better shot. If it is bullshit that you need to come in and say, oh yeah, a booster, we got to take another booster because my shot, making it so that, at that point, I'm not a medicinal expert, but I feel like at that point you're just like, something's going on there. You could make a shot where it lasts for a little bit longer than you need to have the whole world come back and take it every 6 months. That seems a little bit too convenient for you. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, this is Pfizer aside, Heather Bresch was working with Pfizer to keep the prices of the company's EpiPen product artificially high, according to new documents released as part of an ongoing lawsuit. The documents also show Bresch approving a scheme to force customers captured by the company's monopoly to purchase 2 EpiPens at once, regardless of medical need. So, just in case you lose one, I guess. I don't know. In case you didn't know, the EpiPen is an auto-injectable device that injects epinephrine into the body and can be the difference between life or death for a person suffering from a severe allergic reaction. Used with people with diabetes and stuff like that. No, wait, am I? No. Okay. I'm getting confused with insulin. My bad. EpiPen, it's for allergies. So very, very important. Can be very, very important for allergies. So the documents released as part of an ongoing antitrust suit with the federal court, and Daniel Crabtree, the judge in the case, issued a summary judgment, initially siding with Mylan and partially siding with both sides, meaning the case would still go on. Late last week, the judge unsealed some of the documents underlying the plaintiff's case. Among the documents, an email sent on behalf of Bresch, who was the daughter of Joe Manchin, oh, by the way, to her counterpart at Pfizer, then CEO Ian Reed. So again, not Albert Bourla. In the email sent in January 2011, Bresch confirms to a previous discussion with Reed in which she says the two agreed that as part of the deal, Pfizer would disinvest from EpiPen competitor Adrenaclick. Eliminating its main competition will then allow Mylan to continue raising prices. And of course, Pfizer would have to be cut in on that deal. So this is Melissa Shreve on behalf of Heather Bresch. Ian, he writes, this is to the Pfizer CEO, I trust all is well. I'm sending you this email as a reminder that you were supposed to send me your confirmation relative to our discussion regarding EpiPen. In that discussion, you indicated that you would be divesting your Adrenaclick product once the Pfizer King deal closes. I understand your tender offline is closing today, so I'd appreciate receiving your response as soon as possible. So they're like pretty much saying, you're going to get a little competitor that we have, right? Wink, wink, nod, nod. In 2007, when Mylan acquired the rights to market drug from Merck by buying a specialty pharmaceutical subsidiary called Day, buying Merck's specialty pharmaceuticals subsidiary Day, a 2-pack cost less than $100 of EpiPens, a tiny fraction of what it costs today. The result of the deal was that with Merck was that Mylan manufactured part of EpiPen's delivery system, but not the medication itself, while owning the brand name and the right to distribute the whole product. The drug itself was produced by King Pharmaceuticals, which manufactured it exclusively for Mylan. King in 2010 announced that it would be purchased by Pfizer, which was licensed to sell Adrenaclick, an EpiPen competitor, in the previous year. The deal between Pfizer and Mylan was led to confirm the withdrawal. Led the former to withdraw its competitor from the market and partner with Mylan on EpiPen, locking down a monopoly. Following the deal with Pfizer, Mylan drove the price above $600, so that's $100 to $600 within 5 years. Meanwhile, Gail Manchin, Bresch's mother, lobbied states to require schools to stock epinephrine as head of the National Association of State Boards of Education. So yeah, literally, he runs a crime family. This guy literally has his dirty hand over the throat of West Virginia, pretty much through political maneuvering, single-handedly wiped out whatever West Virginia Democratic Party was left, because again, it used to be a very blue state back in the day, and switches off between senator and governor like he's freaking Vladimir Putin. And he has his sister killing people through EpiPen, and his mother making sure that all the products go into all the public schools in West Virginia, which he alternates between being senator of and governor of. He probably wants to go to governor after he's done with the senatorial term. That's certainly what it looks like. He's like freaking Vladimir Putin. Anyway, it's crazy stuff. So they're just passing around, they're mocking the state of West Virginia at this point. This is ridiculous. So we're going to charge $600 to the public school system of West Virginia, $600 per 2-pack when it was $100 before Joe Manchin's family got it. Got their grubby, dirty hands all over it. Gail Manchin was recently confirmed to serve as co-chair of the Appalachian Regional Commission, a governmental agency tasked with promoting economic development across the region's 13 states. So, thank God we got Gail Manchin, leading the charge for the Biden administration's Appalachian Economic Development Program. They've done such a good job with West Virginia, that's for sure. Jesus Christ. Cutting a deal with Pfizer to divest from the competitor may have been brazen enough, but to memorialize the agreement in an email produces a startling window into the ways in which corporate executives are able to manipulate markets. The email sent on behalf of Bresch by her assistant includes the subject line, in quotes here, our discussion. So Bresch did not respond to a request for comment, but Mylan consistently said that there's nothing wrong in how it sets the price of EpiPen. Looking back, I wish we had better anticipated the magnitude of acceleration of the rising financial issues for a growing minority of patients who may have ended up paying the full price or more. We never intended this, says Heather Bresch's daughter. Joe Manchin's daughter, Heather Bresch. And anyway, speaking of this is a very interesting case. It's a very, very interesting case. I wonder if there's anybody who may want something from Joe Manchin who happens to control a little thing called the Department of Justice. Let me think, because is that an old old man who happens to be running the free world at the moment? Yes, I do know a guy who wants something for Joe Manchin that happens to be running the free world at the moment. His name is Joe Biden. Joe Biden, get Merrick Garland to look at Joe Manchin's daughter in the Department of Justice. You know, that may change some minds. That's all I'm going to say.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It's news flash.
Do want to change tactics a little bit here and go to our shift some gears and go to our very fun next story. This is Jonah Furman in the labor notes. 10,000 workers in Iowa, Illinois, and Kansas launched an open-ended strike on October 14th. The strike came after workers overwhelmingly voted down a first tentative agreement negotiated by the UAW. Among over the 90% of members voting, 90% voted no. And of course, this, as we talked about this last time, this is kind of the two-tier plan where pretty much the workers who have been around a little bit longer would get paid better, get treated better. And this is really, the significant thing about this is it kind of shows that these unions are getting more aggressive in what they're pushing for, and what they're saying is perfectly acceptable and okay. Because back in 2009, in the wake of financial crisis, the auto industry was in obviously awful shape, so they had to take a lot of concessions. They had to work with the bosses, and some of the strikes in 2019, like the one I think in Michigan area, was they were in part successful for a lot of the same reasons. People were like sick and tired of saying, oh yeah, we know it's rough. We want to be team players. We want to, take the concessions and get out of the kind of crouch that they've been ever since, 1970s. And that big, 1970, the Reagan era and all that stuff, the real, 20, 30, 40-year war that has been launched on organized labor to such a successful degree. Like, that tide here is so clearly changing. I think it's very, very good to see. So a tentative agreement, again, was initially announced on October 1st, hours before the contract expiration date was extended. Members had been expecting to strike that night, but many were frustrated with an agreement that they felt would have allowed Deere to build up more inventory before a potential strike. So that's what they didn't want to do. They didn't want to have the workers working overtime and people stocking up, building as much capacity so that they could kind of dodge a strike if need be. So there is some really, it's interesting because there really is some serious frustration with the rank and file union in the UAW, and that does come in very, very important. It turns out to be very, very important when it comes time to do things like vote for the union elections, which there is going to be now. Apparently, there's a big referendum coming up for the UAW about I believe direct election of representatives. So that's going to be a big turning point in a very big union, and it's union militancy all over the place is on the rise. So again, workers they've been long dissatisfied here by the union's selective bargaining process. The last contract in 2015 passed by fewer than 200 votes. Many members were frustrated at the time. They only got to see the details in a highlights document during their 2-hour ratification meetings. Everything's always a damn secret with them, said Trevor Bergeron, an iron pourer at Local 838 in the Waterloo Foundry. We are the last thing they think about. Again, talking, I think, here about the union. Since then, according to Chris Larson, former president of the Local 74 in Ottumwa, Iowa, some local presidents have pushed amendments to UAW's Deer Council, made up of all the Deer locals, to guarantee that members will be able to see the full contract, not just the highlights, well in advance of the vote. Larson himself put forward a resolution in 2019 to release the contract at least a week before the ratification vote. It failed, but eventually a motion was passed guaranteeing members would get to see the contract 3 days ahead. So it was a big win, and members voted 99% to authorize a strike. It was a massive turn of events and a big, wake-up call, a bucket of cold water pouring ahead of the unions. We are not satisfied. This was a bad deal. Did you really think we're going to take this? Come on. We want better. And that is something that they're saying And I think really a lot of American workers, it's going to be interesting again to see what happens with IATSE, who are kind of going through a similar situation when they had a strike aversion where they were able to, get off, have a tentative agreement, an agreement to keep negotiating. So we are yet to see where that lies, but that would be huge with 60,000 workers on strike. The most striking workers ever was about 15 million. I think it's about, or 10 million, so I think it's about 15,000 right now, so not really close to that, but definitely a significant, can it continue drive, picking up where we left off in 2017, 2018, some of the teacher strikes, that leading the way towards more broader action here. And some more big union stories coming up in the future. There's some serious things now happening with the labor movement here. And the worst thing about this John Deere situation is that not only they had the 2 tiers in the first place, but what they're trying to do originally was create a 3rd tier. So Deere backed down from the most of these concessions at the bargaining table. These agreement members. The agreement members rejected on October 14th would have maintained the current premium-free health insurance plan. It also would have reinstated the cost of living adjustment, which was limited in the previous contract. Deere workers also, they have 2 tiers of workers on the pre-97 and the post-97 agreements. So in 1997, Deere lowered wages, health care benefits, and pensions for all new hires and eliminated their post-retirement health care. So really brutal stuff. This division of workforce has defined many really in their working experience. The most active hub of rank and file is the post-97 Facebook group. So that's not surprisingly, a lot of people. Because 21 or 24, 25 plus years, that's a long time to work at a place. At a certain point, the posts start to outnumber the pre's there, and it gets a little bit icky for more and more people. But there was a really kind of interesting one. The tentative agreement here, this would have created a 3rd tier, a concession many workers are unwilling to accept. We've been fighting against pre-97, post-97 for years, and then we're going to do it again to the new hires. That makes no sense. So, a 3rd tier tentative agreement agreed to, again, by the union. Not good stuff there. The tentative agreement also included an 11% raise over 6 years, including a 5% raise in year 1. In 2022, 24, and 26, workers would have received 22% lump sums instead of wage increases. That was not enough for most Deere workers who are fed up with watching the company's profits, dividends, and executives pay soar while their own wages stagnate. Maybe it looks like, hey, 5% seems somewhat reasonable, but it's $1, just over $1 an hour. It's comparable to what people in 1997 were making. Again, because you got to take in account of what inflation is going on here, and the fact that cost of living adjustments, all that kind of stuff, and where the company was in 1997 with the standard they treated the workers, and how drastically that declined. The funny part here is that Deere is attempting to run plants with salaried employees, some engineers, but many white-collar office workers as well. So it's not going well. Some had to, buy their first pair of steel-toed boots in preparation for the strike, the scab deployment. So just hours into a strike, before even it got to 8 a.m., Nameless had already been called at the drivetrain operations factory in Waterloo. At the tractor cab and assembly operations across town, a salaried worker crashed a tractor into a pole on the first day. In Coffeyville, Kansas, members on the picket line reported hearing alarms repeatedly going off in the plant, and as was rumored, a salaried employee had attempted to operate the furnace and had been calling members and retirees for advice. White-collar Deere workers who are not union members have their own gripes. Deere cut hundreds of salary jobs in 2020 and are forcing some of the remaining employees into lower pay grades and contractor status, according to salaried workers. Now, hundreds of these workers find themselves working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, in jobs they are not trained for and did not sign up for. And about 650 employees were assigned to the parts distribution center in Milan, Illinois. If you wanted to piss off all of their employment simultaneously, they've done a very good job of doing so, said one white-collar worker to Labor Notes. Again, these people, these white-collar workers, many of them have written to Labor Notes and other outlets. Again, Jonah Furman, a great follower for this on Twitter. And they've been like, I'm sympathetic to the cause. I feel bad about it, but I don't want to get fired, which is a perfectly understandable for urge. Not everyone's going to be like, solidarity, people are going to be like, I got to put food on the table. It's a completely understandable thing to have, I think, for someone. And it's good to see that, they have sympathy, but also it is very, very funny to watch some of the things that they have been up to in there. Since they went on strike, members have been maintaining 24/7 picket lines. Locals have printed shirts that read, "Deemed essential in 2020, prove it in 2021, can't build it from home." On October 18th, the strike's fifth day, several locals made a push for large morning pickets. In Waterloo, members reported a 3-hour backup of salaried workers and management employees attempting to cross the line. In Davenport, 2.5 hours, a mass show-up force last night by a local 865 at Deer Harvesters Works in East Moline, Illinois, drew 1,000 picketers and stretched for 15 blocks, according to one striker's estimate. Wall Street sounds worried. Bank of America's analysis on day one of the strike was headlined, "Deer likely has limited appetite for extended strike." Workers were conscious of the financial implications as well. The fiscal year for Deere ended October 31st, so this puts a real cramp on them at the end of the quarter and the end of the year. That was a huge issue of why we wanted to do it now, because if we give them another extension, they're going to finish out the fiscal year, and this will all be in the 2022 book, so let's put a wrench in things now. Love it. The quicker we can put a financial debt on them, the better we're off we are when it comes to showing them we mean business, said one Davenport worker. The company plans to cut off workers' health insurance by the end of October. The UAW has a $790 million strike fund, is picking up COBRA payments and providing strike pay of $275 a week. The union and Deere resumed negotiations this week. So that's why you got, that's why you pay your dues. Like, that's what's there for when you're really trying to improve conditions in your life. UAW, you're not going to make the same, obviously you're not going to make the same amount of money, but you are going to be able to, continue to strike comfortably for hopefully as long as it takes. So the Deere contract is the biggest deal negotiated by the UAW since the resignation of President Gary Jones over corruption charges in November 2019. Former VP Norwood Jewell, who led bargaining in the last year contract, was sentenced to 15 months in prison for taking legal payments from Fiat Chrysler. Yesterday, UAW's 400,000 active members and 600,000 retirees began voting in a mail-in ballot referendum on whether to move to direct election for the union's top officers rather than delegate system that has made one-party control over leadership positions for the past 7 decades. Anger over the two-tier contracts and secretive bargaining will impact that vote. So UAW members with Unite All Workers for Democracy Reform Group, who are pushing a yes vote in the referendum, organized a solidarity fund to bring supplies to the DR picketers, and they raised $45,000 in the first 24 hours. So good stuff there all around. We can be following that strike for you, and especially taking a look at any possible injunctions. Some strikers may be receiving the picket line, bringing those to you on future shows. Stay tuned. We will be back on Friday. So we'll see you then.